Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. It's just us three at the minute, and I've clicked a site over here that wants some sort of subscription.
It's not just; it's especially us.
The
riffraff aren't here yet.
Quite so. It wasn't me bit respond. I don't know if you've seen, Mark. Have you seen the video of the guy in Scotland where the police have knocked his door?
Yeah. Will we be surprised?
Not really. Did you see his flyaway video?
I've seen a lot of his video. He's done a lot of BV loss. Looks like BV loss stuff. And you've got to realize that if it's not the regulator themselves, someone's going to grizzle and bitch and moan and complain. Yeah. And I have concerns because, the guy in Australia that does all the long range tests on FPV gear and radio gear, I'm surprised that someone hasn't grizzled about him yet because, 35K or something, that's the very limits of line of sight.
Well, my eyes are quite good. It's
I must admit, I've not seen his videos, so I can't really comment on, how far he's flown. I think because I've not seen the videos. The only thing that I did, so I watched the video of where they went and they visited him, and I saw it. They need to be a bit clearer with the ANO, saying that it's the air navigation order you've breached. You are not flying visual line of sight. The 500-meter rule has gone. It is visual line of sight. So they were misquoting there, the police were. So the police need a little bit more training when deal with things like this. So they should be going to him, if he has flown beyond visual line of sight, should be saying, look, we're going to charge you under the air navigation order. If you've been warned of the air navigation order or whatever, you are apparently flying beyond visual line of sight, which will end up in court and they will decide this. This is the rule you're breaching. You're not flying to the visual line of sight rules. And that's what you could potentially be done under. That's where they should be going with it. And they should be explaining that part of it. But the 500-meter thing, that's been gone a while. So that was interesting.
That guy should have challenged it. He wasn't. He was angry, but he wasn't assertive. He should have said, "Can you please quote the exact part of the air navigation or air regulation rules that I have infringed? Please quote it verbatim, because I dispute the 500-meter thing. It's no longer an issue."
Yeah, that's the only bit. But I don't know what drone he flies. If he was flying a Mini, for example, 500.
Yes, a Mini 249. Although he has flown another drone as well. I think he's quite a few videos, but the one involved, I think, was probably a Mini.
So the Mini isn't visible beyond about 250 anyway to most human eyes. I mean, I would struggle. I would struggle at 200 meters to 250 with a Mini 2 on a good day. Wow.
But then you've got does the UK CAA define what visual line of sight means? Is it being able to see the craft? Is it being able to see it sufficiently well to orient it, or being able to see the area in which it's flying so as to ensure a deconfliction?
So the CAA actually state you must be able to see the aircraft in good visible conditions. So you've got to be able to see the aircraft physically, and you have to be able to take avoiding action to avoid other aircraft. But you have to be able to see the aircraft itself, or a spotter that is stood next to you. So the spotter.
Oh, you can always see the spotter. He's right next door to you.
Yes, people don't. The thing is, Bruce, people will go, "Oh, I've got a spotter," but they're 200 meters away, and they think that's close enough, and it's not. The CAA do stipulate they're stood with you. And they do, they say in visual line of sight, you've got to be able to see the aircraft to orientate it, to be able to take avoiding action. They don't care about being able to see it in a block of airspace. That is not a visual line of sight. You've got to be able to orientate your aircraft correctly, basically.
The thing is, this whole thing though, stand close. The spotter must be standing next to you. I had a problem with CAA in New Zealand over this because when they took my wings off, or when I lost my wings because I fell out with the national model flying body, I was still flying because I was flying under supervision, and the rule said that the supervisor must be just supervising, and the supervisor was standing like 10 meters away, and the persnickety grumpy old man at CAA said that was a breach of the rules because he wasn't close enough. And I'm thinking, well, it doesn't define the distance. It's all very subjective. It's like visual line of sight. Maybe you couldn't see the drone at 200 meters, but perhaps I could. It's like, that's probably why they put the 500-meter thing in there, to give a very hard line in the sand. But it's such a difficult thing to administer and to get rules that are not either subjective or overly restrictive. It's just do not endanger people. Do not endanger other people's property. That's all you need.
Yeah. Well, they took away the 500 meters. That's the critical bit, Bruce. It's really bizarre. It never used to be 500 meters. Then they put 500 meters in. Then they took it out again, and it's not in there now because I think they've realised that model flyers. So if I'm flying a big jet that's got a 9-foot wingspan, if you're flying something like that can do 120, 200 miles an hour, 500 meters is peanuts. You know what I mean? You'll wind that turbine up, and as you know, 500 meters, you're probably at 750 before you're starting your turn or something crazy. The 500 meter thing's just horse.
It is crazy because what they're trying to tell me is that at 300 meters, this is more dangerous than a Phantom 4 because you can't see this at 400 meters, but you can see the Phantom 4. Seriously? What are you drinking there?
Don't get me wrong. We know the rules are crazy to a degree, but they quite clearly define it in the UK.
As the geeks have said, keep poking and expect a bite back. I mean, that is the bottom line. And these couple of flyaway, I mean, careless and reckless endangerment. I think that the flyaway one he had, you might argue that it was in the moors, it was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but he only flies in the moors because it's much easier to bury the bodies in soft ground.
I assume he's flying in Scotland, but if you said the moors to me in the UK, the amount of paramotor flies there are around in the Yorkshire moors, for example, you wouldn't want to fly away in some places because you would find a paramotor fly.
Hang on, aren't paramotors 500 feet and above?
No, there's no rules.
Aren't they? Well, they are in New Zealand. In New Zealand, because we had some at the airfield, will be in my next video, some paramotors there, and they were saying, we've got to fly over 500 feet. And,
they'll say they're taking off or landing. So but no, they'll say they're as an approach to land, a precautionary landing, or just a little practice approach. So, well, that's what all aviation does.
Well, there was that plane that crashed off the runway, wasn't there?
Which one?
Have you not seen that? Oh, I need to dig that story out for you. 1 second. I'm just going to disappear into my computer for a minute.
Oh, fair enough. You climb on in there. No, that guy in Scotland, it was going to happen, and he was posting BV loss videos to make, to boost his channel, and the flyover was a terrible, and how he handled all that. That was a terrible display of airmanship, really. As you say, Bruce, don't harm anyone or put anyone in danger. And if you don't like the rules, you need to change them. Blatantly break them and taunt authorities. And reading what Sean's saying here, better put this up as well.
Mind you, there is another alternate side to what Sean says, because I always have to disagree with them. Can't agree with them too often. And that is that if you go on YouTube and you'll find so many thousands and thousands and thousands of videos where people are flying drones and models BV loss, and there are no bodies. And it kind of proves the point that this is safe. If we don't see that, if everyone says, we're not going to show people flying below visual line of sight, then everyone believes, it's really dangerous. If someone did fly BV loss, people could die. But we've got so many proofs that BV loss doesn't have to be dangerous, that it is evidence. It's information we can use to have the rules changed. Show us, we provide the evidence we can do it safely. You provide the evidence that we can't, or it poses an unreasonable risk. This is one way to change the rule set. If you embarrass the regulators because they say this is dangerous and you prove it's not, that's one way to get pressure to change rules.
Unfortunately, it means you've got to be willing to go to court, and you've got to have the money, because the CA will have the money. The CA's got the money.
You can represent yourself. I mean, I stand up to these people. I mean, you don't have to have a lawyer and expensive things. If you basically organize your case properly, in some ways, sometimes it does give you a bit of an advantage if you are representing yourself. You get a bit of help from the judge sometimes. Don't ask me how I know this.
But I think the thing is, though, if CAA Legal decides you should have got Richard on it. If CAA Legal decides to go after you, they don't press the button unless they're sure that they're going to get you. And if that's the first shot across the bow of this chap being knocked to check his address, things like that, then he is in a world of hurt is coming his way. And as Mark said, it was a very expensive exercise. To go.
He could have just found that SD card in the grass while he's out walking on the moors. That's the problem. So there's a very high threshold to proof. I mean, remember, it's the CIA's job to prove, not his job to prove that he didn't. This is the way justice works. You're innocent until proven guilty. So they have to prove that he did this. They have to have all their ducks in a row. They have to prove he was flying the craft and that so forth. And unfortunately, the way he videos things, he has himself and shows himself flying things, which is a silly thing to do. You can't use the "I found an SD card in the grass" excuse. But I mean, anyone. Yeah, anyone with half a brain will find SD cards in the ground. Even though when I did that CAA, I think I already spoke about it. They contacted me and said, "Can we have that SD card, please, so that we can see who was flying?" They actually, honestly, well, at least they led me to believe that they believed I'd found an SD card in the grass. But that's when you're going to be intelligent if you're making a video and you're going to put it up on YouTube. Don't incriminate yourself. Use your brain.
And that's the problem with a lot of YouTube videos in the UK. You're going to fly BVLOS and you're going to state you're flying X distance. You are literally incriminating yourself. It's like driving down the road in a car at 120 miles an hour and you're filming it and the police knock on your door and you get done for speeding and dangerous driving and you wonder why. But what's also interesting, and I've heard this a few times over the years, when the old PFCO used to exist in the UK, we used to have the permission for commercial operations, flying in built-up areas. There was a few people that didn't have it and were caught out, and the CA went and knocking, as they can do occasionally, as they'll send the police as well. They went knocking and said to these people, "You're flying in a built-up area without a PFCO. Either you stop or we are going to take you to court. This is your choice," kind of thing. And do you know what? No one has ever challenged the CAA further enough for them to ever get into a court. The CAA have always applied enough pressure to go with the police either way and gone, right, you want to do this again.
Speaking of which, I was flying at the weekend and we had a steam train came here, which is something unusual. They don't have many steam trains anymore. Most of them are electric or whatever, diesel. So a steam train with a whole lot of carriages rolled up. It was a bit of a tourist thing. So I went down with my camera to film it all. And I took a drone down and I'm getting ready to take off with the drone. And this guy comes up and says, "Oh, you can't fly a drone here." And I turned around. I had my T-shirt that says "Licensed Drone Pilot" on it. And he looked at me and said, "Oh, no, you're okay." So the T-shirt is really important. The T-shirt you wear is really important.
Yes, but it's like that lanyard thing I got when I went to Farnborough. Yes, the clipboard, and in fact, we're having this discussion at school today that we need a few clipboards and high-vis vests to walk around in the look officious. But that's world over for any manner of things, isn't it? It'll get you through the door, won't it? Into too many things. It's like this OPSEC stuff, isn't it? When where people will leave the building penetration guys will leave a sign on a door saying "Don't close, need access to fix whatever, a fire hydrant or something," and people leave the door open. It's that sort of a thing, isn't it? Oh yeah. No, I mean that chap, the telemetry thing. I mean, as you said, Bruce, I think you mentioned in this comments I saw on Twitter, on the Twitters. I think you know how he did the telemetry trick. I mean, none of that's going to work, is it? None of that's going to wash with the CAA. He's just digging his own hole, really, going down that road. Even releasing that video. I mean, I don't know. To me, a layman, that's a bit antagonistic. Releasing a video like that, the police, and of course, sure, the police didn't know exactly what bits of the law they had to quote, because when they weren't got on shift at 8 o'clock that morning, they had no idea they were going to knock on someone's door and talk about that sort of thing. And so, but it's the fact that they're not, to me anyway, if the police knocked on my door, I'd be worried. Okay, come here for a reason.
It strikes me though, he's a pretty harmless old guy and he flies in very remote areas. It's not like he's doing this over the built-up area. He's taking some precautions. And it just speaks to the inadequacy of regulation to address the real risks, whilst at the same time constraining things that are not unsafe. We need a big shake-up. The regulations are still 5-10 years behind the technology. We really do need to sit down, and unless the regulators are willing to engage and consider things that they don't consider at the moment, there's going to be more of this. People are just flouting the regulations left, right, and centre. Just not everybody posts it on YouTube.
Which is, of course, a sensible thing to do. If you're going to flout the rules, don't put it on Facebook.
Put on someone else's channel.
Social media, yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, the bizarre thing is, I think in the YASA regs, STS, the standard scenario stuff that was going to come, and we're now not part of that. There was a piece about flying BV loss if you're in very rural areas. So if you're in Switzerland and you're in the Alps, for example, or in the mountains or whatever, BV loss at 5 kilometers was going to be permitted. If you're in the middle of nowhere, with not in a busy airspace, they were going to allow you to do such things as 4 or 5 kilometers or whatever. But now we're not in that, and would it ever have happened here is another thing anyway.
Yeah, this whole BV loss thing has to change though, because if I'm flying in a wooded area, I can be out of sight in a matter of seconds, but I'm still totally safe to aircraft and beast because there's no one else there. It doesn't matter that I can't see the drone or my spotter Arnie can't see the drone because there's nothing there to be harmed. So when you make it so restrictive that you can't fly beyond visual line of sight, it should be you may not fly beyond visual line of sight except when it is safe to do so. I mean, admit there are conditions when you can do it safely.
See,
so somewhere where sorry, Mark, I was just going to say somewhere where there are power lines and people in shops or something, would that perhaps be an unsafe area to be trying to fly BV loss?
Exactly. And then when you go to court, you've only got to prove you don't, because at the moment it's cut and dried. If you flew beyond visual line of sight, ka-ching, the judge will rule you get a big fine or whatever. But if you have a rule that says only when it's safe to do so, you can bring your case to say, yes, I was breaking the rule, or I was flying beyond visual line of sight, but I didn't break the rule because it was safe to do so for these reasons. No people, no property, and the craft was 49 grams or something. Those can be mitigating factors you can bring. But at the moment, those factors count for nothing because if he flew BV loss, he broke the rule.
Unless you're wing in Brisbane and you're landing on top of oh, here's not Bruce.
I am not Bruce.
No,
do you have super chats, Gary? Because appearances demand a £5 super chat.
Oh, okay. I'm so glad I employed you as my business manager, Bruce. I don't know why I pay you so much until moments like this, and then
that's why we have two people watching this time.
Exactly how you earn your. Can any authority? That's quite a good question. Can any authority demand your flight logs? Well, that would presuppose you keep them.
I do know, and this is interesting. So I do know people that have been audited by the CAA, and if you take your drone in, they will hook it up to a computer and they will have a look at your logs.
Yeah,
there's only certain aircraft they don't know how to do. So
standard remote ID would have proven where the guy was standing, so this is just opening the door to bring in standard remote ID in the UK. Oh, if you don't want to be a prosecutor like this, you've got to have standard remote ID. We can look at the logs at both ends.
No, so standard remote ID doesn't log the flight. It would only prove it at the time of the flight. So if the police weren't there,
yes. You'd have to have been there monitoring.
But maybe the witness was there, whoever dobbed him in. They could say, I was there.
Yes, I think the word witness might be a little bit generic as well.
It must be true. I saw it on YouTube.
I think we have to look behind it as well as to what could be happening and the wording that actually was used by the officers and what that could lead on. I mean, is the witness a single person or an entity? There's I have a feeling there's a lot more going on, and this was, as Gary said earlier, this was a confirmation knock that they have to tick a box on a big long legal form to say, yes, we've been to the residence, yes, we've ticked the box, we've seen the whites of his eyes, etc. And
yes, he does live
and then
there.
It moves on. I have a feeling anyway, and I have a feeling the witness may not even turn out to be an individual.
Who knows why he got the knock, but it's how you react to that knock, isn't it? I suppose that would be my concern. I mean, you don't video it and then put it up, and then put up some made-up evidence or made-up constructs of apps.
And I don't think necessarily that this is the way to get the rule changes that people want. I don't think this is the way to convince the regulator to say, okay, we've seen the error of our ways, and now we're going to go in. Now we're going to deregulate everything, and you can fly however you like. I don't think this is necessarily the way to do it. And I think that through the type of work that Bruce does, etc., I think that's more akin to the way that's going to get a change eventually, etc. And still flying responsibly when you are on YouTube and on social media, etc. But then outwardly speaking about it. I think that's the way, in campaigning, I think that's the way to make these things work. I don't think
it hasn't worked very well in the past, though, that method. You have to use multiple strategies. I mean, we look at what most of the sort of official organizations, like in the USA, like the AMA, they work with the authorities to get things, and nothing happens. Working with them is just, the system is designed against you. You get nowhere. You get absolutely nowhere by trying to work with these. Sometimes you just got to draw a line in the sand and stand up and say, no, not having it.
Sorry, I'm cleaning my desk as I go, because this is my old studio at home that I don't use anymore. So I'm just realizing, okay, I've got that in the picture. Apologies. But that in itself is a good point as well, because of course, even when we engage with things like the CAA public consultations, which they are very, very good at running at the moment, and look at the extension for transition, etc., they appear to have listened to their stakeholders. So congratulations on that. But of course, they're not even the people that are going to be deciding these things. It's higher at government, DFT, etc., and this type of thing. And how to engage at that level is very, very difficult when you look at the whispers that are in their ears, etc., and even the shouts that are in their ears, etc. And it is very, very difficult. And I look at things where I always say my fear is that if somebody really wanted to come down on us as a hobby or as an industry, they just have to show, a few of the politicians, a few of the government people, etc., that don't know drones, droning YouTube, and they'd probably be horrified at what they would see. They won't think, oh, but no one's crashed and no one's died and no one's this and no one's that. They'll just see a lot of blatant breaching of the rules, and then they'll come down on us like a ton of bricks. And which is why I worry about things like the audit channels going to private businesses an awful lot and things. And yes, it's legal. Yes, they're allowed to do it, etc., etc. But where will it lead? Will it lead to those businesses complaining to their MPs with multi-millionaire businesses, multi-million pounds global companies complaining about the security? Where will that lead?
And that's why I campaign so hard to have the traditional hobby completely separated from the drone. We're not flying drones, because as long as we are lumped in there, if that happens, is what Sean suggests happens, then it kills the hobby. But they've got no right to do that. We need to say drones are a different thing. And I can't believe that we don't have the national model flying bodies taking a more aggressive stance on that one. You can't throw us in with can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because most people on the street don't realize that model aircraft are considered drones and are regulated with exactly the same sets of rules. And that's the protection I think that we need, but we don't have it. We don't have that separation. It's a bit like Dave Jones. Bureaucrats have a very non-granular view of the world. If you want to send something overseas that's an electronic item, you can't have a battery in it. Doesn't matter whether it's a 100 watt-hour explodey type lithium battery or a AAA zinc carbon battery. It's a battery. It's dangerous, because we've seen pictures of Teslas blowing up in the streets. These people have got this one-eyed view of the world. We need to change that. So that's one of the reasons on XJet I show people having fun with model aircraft, and occasional drones, but to show that the hobby is still completely, it's a fun thing. There's nothing you'd see on my channel that would make you feel frightened unless you were actually there. But we try things. I want to try and separate this out. But the model flying community isn't doing enough to promote itself as something separate and to promote itself as a family-friendly, enjoyable pastime, not someone who's trying to spy through your window when you're getting changed in the shower, that sort of thing. I get changed in the shower. You get clothes wet. Anyway, but we're not doing enough as a community to actually make that distinction. And so the regulators, it's just, we just keep it simple. Everything's the same. We should not be accepting that at all and step aside and say, nope, not having it. Oh, my phone's ringing.
That ship's sailed, isn't it? That ship has sailed, though, mate. It's over there. There it goes. We're watching that ship receding into the distance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, the bright lights of potentially having what do I want to say? Contained places where only your club's members can fly, your organisation members can fly, and you can ramp your fees up, etc., etc., etc. Blinded model flying clubs or model flying national entities, and they were railroaded by commercial interests who said, no, it should be like this, and we promise we'll give you this in the end, and they haven't.
If you go to the average model flying field, you don't see Phantoms and Mavics in the sky. They're not there. They don't fly there.
No, I know, but we've got to go to Barbados and have a hobby fly at our club, rum included. Right? Okay,
just send the rum.
Yeah,
make a note of that. Oh, wouldn't that be horrible? That would be a terrible job to have to go and do that task. Thank you, David. It's very kind. And if you're ever in this part of Africa, do come and say hello. Yeah, no, the hobby's been railroaded, and lots of people, and we're seeing it again now. We're seeing it again with RID. I have a RID compliant drone now. I have ticked the boxes. And what an exciting experience it was too. Do
you get better pictures, a bit of video?
Oh, everything. Oh, yeah. It's everything. It's in color now.
Did it make it safer?
Oh,
Talkies do.
Yeah.
Does it make it safer? Yeah. Does it make it so manned aviation can see what's going on with your drone now?
Oh, no.
Oh, it doesn't do that. Oh,
no,
okay.
No.
That
has been so nicely revealed. That the game they've shown their hands. The people that sat in a meeting, a closed meeting, rushed out of the meeting, quickly patented what they heard, and ran off and said, "We're all here for the hobby." But they've shown their hand by moaning that app makers are revealing the GCS position as well, which the standard allows. It's an open standard. So those app makers are, it was a full rant ahead, aren't I? It was a dumb standard in the first place. It was ill-conceived from the very get-go. And now they're beginning to say, oh, we've really made a mistake not having what was it, network ID? Did they call it? What did they call that part of it? Whatever it is.
Yeah, network remote ID with the
network. We've really made a mistake because, of course, it would be secure and nobody else will be able to. So they're quickly trying to bash back onto that network remote ID concept as well.
This was only ever a diversion to get us used to the concept of remote ID before network remote ID was brought in, so the UTMs could charge us every time we arm.
But network remote ID is going to come faster because the people that were going to monetize selling to the police forces the data or an app with the ability to show the data didn't figure that some people would let it be out there for free. They didn't work that one out.
I can't figure it. I can't understand. I can't believe how ignorant some of the hobby suppliers are regarding this whole remote ID thing, because I contacted Horizon Hobby and said, are you still selling ready to fly and bind and flies without remote ID? And because, as you know, as of the 16th of September, it was supposed to be they're deferring the enforcement till the 16th of December. And their response was, oh, it's not a thing until 2023. They don't realize that they have to have standard remote ID in these model aircraft that you can buy and fly without any building. They don't even realize it. They think, oh, no, we got another year. What's going on?
Crazy.
Yeah. But so I've forgotten even why I went down the road of that rant. It's just another way in which the hobby, that's right, it's just another way in which the hobby side of things has just had the rug pulled under them, wool pull over their eyes, all sorts of other phrases and catch things. It's terrible.
Even in definitions, you've got the two seats on the FAA advisory committee, which are hobbyist seats, both occupied by one guy that owns an RID patent, and the other guy who is a commercial operator. So you literally have no hobbyists. I mean, even somebody of like Dave Messina, I think, would have been better to have on there, because at least he has a hobbyist group that he represents.
Yeah, Dave's a nice guy, but I think he's too much of a let's work with the man. Let's not upset things. And we need someone like me who's arrogant and rude and confronts the issues. But just to remind these people that they're working for us.
Yeah, but you're not arrogant and rude. You just have opinions, and I think it actually would be quite a good idea, because I think we might actually see some kind of. I think people would trust what comes off these things more as well if there was more representation.
Yeah,
they would then say, okay, you've got these people in the room. That guy is me. He represents me, and I believe that. And we've come out with this set of results. Therefore, I'm much more willing to buy into this. And I don't think that regulators or governments in this industry see the value in bringing us, bringing us along with it, basically, rather than just throwing things at us. And actually, if they had brought us along with them, and it's not too late to do that, that ship hasn't sailed, then they could get a lot more compliance. They could get a lot more support from the grassroots level, which will be very powerful all the way through industry, in my opinion.
I don't know why they don't do what they've done with a lot of groups, like in New Zealand. The Microlight group is pretty much self-regulating. The CAA sort of farmed out the responsibility to the national body to regulate them with some guidelines. Why don't they do that with the hobby? Say, okay, we're going to make a new part 1.0 whatever or 2.0 whatever, and that is the hobby, and the hobby that is regulated by its own governing body, and it's responsible. Flyers are responsible to that body, and there's just a light oversight from the regulator.
Do you think security has stopped that? Do you think because in one of my videos talking about RID and why we have to put up with it and that type of thing is the elephant in the room that's actually a very small part of the risk, but has a much greater proportion of power to the risk, because of obviously any kind of security issue that can happen would be potentially devastating. Therefore, they get a lot more say in what happens. So I wonder if that stopped the hobby being less regulated.
I haven't seen any model aircraft endangering national security. I mean, so it's not a security issue.
Well,
it just doesn't.
Don't forget that the what are they called in America? The feds, whatever they're called, feds, FBI. Don't forget
the guy who was building the jets with
that was set up. He was set up having never flown a model jet, didn't want a model jet, didn't fly model aeroplanes, and they set him up with that Model F4 and some C4, and then they arrested him. It was a miracle.
It was ridiculous. The banana hobbies, it wasn't an F-86 or something. If a Sabre,
I thought it was an F4.
A blue Sabre, I think it had and some C4. And it would never have even carried it. And those Sabres are crap anyway. Those particular model that they set him up with, it was just trying to create the illusion of risk where there was none.
But that was because. That was because, and if Patrick's still in the comments, he was actually at the gig where the Feds or someone said, the FBI, he was at the gig where they said, come and give us a model flying demonstration, and the military were there and whatever. This would have been about 2000, I want to say 2007, 2008. And they went, and they were absolutely horrified by the model jets. They were horrified by the potential of the actual model jets. And
I think there's a speed limit on drones in America too, isn't it? 99 miles an hour. You can't go any faster than that.
There is.
Some kind of, they've got this strange phobia. But the thing is, all this stuff in America is crazy. I mean, so many people in America carry sidearms, but I've never seen anyone beaten to death with a foamy. So, let's proportionate the risks. People get shot every day in the USA, either by defense or by as a crime. It's deal with the real problems, Americans.
And don't forget the one.
Well, the other, and Sean's done a great video. Sorry,
I think Gary's internet's having a spaz.
Well,
was it?
I've just seen Gary's name on screen as well. Actually, that's very good.
But RID doesn't improve safety at all, because there's no current system that would tell you if something's wrong or right in the air anyway. And if there was one that's not got RID on it,
so I think just put the face cam.
How would you know which one is the one that's not right? If you have 4 aircraft in the same airspace, it'd be a nightmare.
Well, that's the other thing, spoofing. I mean, why not just make an app that broadcasts like as if it was a drone and just wander around broadcasting signal for like 10 or 12 drones when there's nothing there?
Well, if you wanted to spoof something, that's not hard to do. Isn't there a system for airplanes where you can spoof RID? You can spoof their ADSB. You could do that,
ADSB, yeah.
Yeah, which is meant to be secure. It's meant to be for manned aviation. It's meant to be safe. But if you wanted to, you could spoof.
You can't say it's meant to. It was never meant to be secure. It was from 1990. It's from a time before that they hadn't seen the Raspberry Pi coming. They hadn't seen SDR radios. They hadn't realised that groups of citizens would stand up and work out how to create the software to then not only track the ADSB signals are simple in their full context because they've got the GPS position and stuff in it, but people are doing mode S, mode C, mode A stuff now. The clever people out there have worked out how to do this, and the air traffickers and governments didn't see that. I had a little bit of a ranty post about the handing over of control of Gatwick to NATS, or back to NATS after 6 years. and I've had some side chats with Ian of the Freedom of Information requests, and we're rather hoping that some more information could come out because of this, because some of the Freedom of Information requests have been sort of modified by a company, an entity, and we're not quite sure how they have the right to do that, but they have managed to. But maybe that entity's gone now, and perhaps soon, when some people that are laid off by Nats, because Nats kind of said that's what they're going to do in their press release after the new controllers have done their local knowledge test, because that's what they'll need to do to get up to speed to work at Gatwick, that perhaps some disgruntled employers will tell us what's really going to happen or what really happened there. But that's I think we might see that bursting open this year. I hope so. I truly hope the truth of that comes out, and that. The leverage that was used there, and this comes back to Sean's comments earlier, really, about getting in the right person's ear with the right voice. That Gatwick narrative exactly changed. What do we get? What are they called? Freers in the UK, I think, aren't they? That changed. Those weren't coming.
I think that's the FAA zones. It's
the
FOIAs,
FAA one, is it?
FOIAs, but yeah. Yeah, because the FAA freers are those fields that you can go and fly in without remote ID, aren't they?
So what's
FO Freedom of Information? So FOIAs.
Yeah.
Oh no, not FOIAs. No. I'm talking about the.
Oh, we've got freedom. We've got the FRZs, don't we?
The little airspace around airfields.
Yeah.
FRZs. That's what I meant to say. Well, that wasn't coming until the Gatwick narrative started, and that was words in ears, as you said earlier, Sean. You've got to get the right words into the right ears, and you'll have it. And that played into counter UAS people's idea of well, we're going to have that, but then we better sell you some gear so you can monitor that restriction zone and make sure people are staying out of there. All those narratives, it was all in there, and they just jumped on it. Oh, well, stop ranting now. Someone else talk.
So what you're saying is that someone who was on the inside might actually tell us exactly what kind of drone it was.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. They should. Well, no, they could now because it wasn't all there.
As I mentioned last week, we do have an interview coming very soon on Gatwick, which I think is going to be fairly controversial. And it's the start of a couple of videos that we're doing on the topic, because of a few dates passing and a few contracts passing and that type of thing that we're now able to do. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the next 6 to 12 months there's going to be a lot of revelations, and I think there might even be an attitude to cleanse, an attitude to try and actually get as much of the facts out there as possible. But obviously they're going to have to do that in a way that doesn't make everybody for the last X years look like a complete idiot, basically.
Oh no, let's do that.
We're not complete. There's bits missing.
Oh no, anyone.
That's not my choice. I mean that's how they will have to do it. You know.
No, they don't. Anyone who's been quoting Gatwick and a drone for the past so many years, make them look like a complete tit.
But after a little while, it doesn't matter if the truth of a thing comes out, because it's sunk into the national psyche, and it is just believed to be true, and that's that. And we're at that point, aren't we? It doesn't matter. It'll matter to us and the people in the industry, and we'll care about it. But let's face it, there's very few people in the big scheme of things.
To be honest, I'm kind of. This sounds a bit. I'm kind of glad FRZs now do exist to a degree, because I remember, because I've been flying that long, I could fly sub 7 kilos literally at the end of an airfield runway, and they couldn't stop you. You know, the old rules were literally you could fly a sub 7 kilo at the end of a runway, and they couldn't stop you. Now, part of me is glad the rules have changed. Could you imagine how many mini users would try to film a plane coming into land if that rule did not exist now? You know, the FRZs weren't there. So part of me is kind of, they needed to do something with airports. I'm not sure about the way they did it. The original way was an FRZ is active, but if the airfield is shut, you can actually fly inside the airport, inside the FRZ, but not the airport itself, without their permission, which was perfect. It made a lot of sense. And then all of a sudden we went, no, we better make it so you've now got to have permission to fly inside that entire area, which was a little bit of a shame because when they were shut, it just made our lives so much easier.
Yeah. Well, certainly lots of things.
Isn't it? It's a double-edged sword. I mean, I've flown at the end of Humberside. I remember I had an EB well before the rules changed, no FRZ. I rung them up and said, I'm here. I'm going to fly because I was being polite. And they were like, yeah, okay. So I take off and literally I'm just out of line with the runway, not by much, but I'm just out of line of it. And I take off and I get a phone call back and I answer the phone. It's the ATC and they go, can we just check where you are? And I told them, says, could you just land now? And I went, just 1 second. I pushed the button to bring the EB back to land. I went, yeah, drone's coming back to land. And they were like, oh yeah, in about a minute, you're going to get a plane land and then 3 helicopters. Then you can fly again. I'm like, well, why didn't you let me? I wanted to know, why do you want to let me fly in the first place? Why don't you say wait 5 or 10 or 20 minutes?
But that speaks to another thing, and that speaks to which America I know has a problem with, is not being able to actually talk to and contact the air traffickers and have words with them and say, I'm here doing this. So we've got our people that are going to be naughty. Let's part them away. But let's say you've got a real job of work to do. And I think that needs to, a lot of that needs to come back in as well. A lot more trust between an operator and an air trafficker. And you've had a chat. You've built a rapport, and you're getting on with the work. That's got to get back into the workflow a little bit. I think automating all that sort of thing is a bad idea because neither side knows what they're dealing with then. Whereas if you have a phone call, it might seem a bit old-fashioned and archaic. Maybe that's just me, but a genuine point of contact will beget a genuine relationship.
But we should be dealt with it in real time, same as manned aviation. So a plane wants to enter the airspace.
What you want is a UTM, Mark.
Well, I don't want a UTM.
But you're describing what a UTM will do. I think you're an advocate for UTMs. Have you been bought over by somebody?
It should be a phone call. It should be quite simple. So most airports in the UK, you can actually just phone them on the day. However, there are quite a few that go, oh, we want 7 days notice, 14 days notice. It's like, go on then, you tell me the weather report for the next 14 days and I'll tell you the time exactly I'll fly on X day because the weather's going to be nice.
So when are you starting your auditing channel then? That sounds like an auditor talking.
Yeah, but could you imagine they've got all these operators here because people are phoning in and you'd call them and you'd, good afternoon, can I help you please? Because it'd be in India or something, the call center, it'd be just useless.
No, it doesn't.
No, I think
you actually get through to an
that bombshell.
Yeah, I know. We're going to back away from that quick.
Is it the time? I've got to go. Sorry, guys. I was never here.
The military around me are really good. So RAF Waddington, RAF Coningsby, 2 of the big bases here. Those ATCs are spot on. Scampton's now shut. Yeah, East Midlands, right? They're a joke. East Midlands, their ATC needs re-educating. There's Gloucestershire, they need re-educating. There's London Heliport. The CAA, though, is proving it's got no teeth to deal with these ATCs. Absolutely, they say that they should not be charging. And quite clearly, while everyone is worried about CA and if they've got a bit of teeth about doing us for BV loss or the guy in Scotland having words with him, actually what they want to do is get the finger out of the backside and deal with these airports that are charging us. Now, it's been a little bit harsh because the CA do have a lot to do and they do a cracking job. Don't get me wrong. But there are some things, we've had this problem for a while now, a few years, a few ATCs, airports charging this. They need to knock it off. The CA needs to get its finger out of its backside, I'm afraid, and they need to flex what muscles, if any, they have and go to these ATCs and just go, knock it off. This is not acceptable. How can it cost more to fly a drone in a flight restriction zone than it is to fly into an airport and park a Cessna overnight? How can it cost more for a 20-minute flight than it can for an overnight stay? It's ridiculous. They need to kick up the backside, a lot of them that are charging.
We'll not have the advocation of violence on this channel.
Sorry for the rant.
So that in the last 5 minutes, that's racism and violence.
Yes,
and anything else we can try and get Gary.
Let's talk about Ukraine, shall we, for a little bit?
Well, let's talk about the new radiation-hardened drone that's being shipped to Ukraine right now from DJI.
Well, maybe
glow in the dark.
Well, let's jump on the DJI phrase there. Sean this evening's had a live stream about, and I missed it because our interwebs was out then, about the latest American restrictions, or whatever you want to call it. I just see these things as a long time coming, and they finally landed, but folks are not keeping up about alcohol consumption. That'd be nice. Folks are not keeping up with the potential implications. I personally don't think there's going to be a big rush to change, but they have opened the door to change, I think, with this one. What I mean by that is, they've opened the door to a place where the president will have to approve it, will have to go through Congress, but they could get to a point where they will be able to sanction people selling DJI gear in America. So that would be very interesting. But doesn't mean I think they're going to do that. But I think that's what they've given themselves a position to do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr or someone of that nature tries to use this benchmark to then put sanctions on. But I agree. It's a long way off. If it's as far as getting down to consumer level, it's a long way off. This is, as you've just very eloquently explained, this is a confirmation of a 2-year thing that's been going on, which we've heard all these headlines on, just confirming it so that it's actually there. You're on the 1260H, and therefore you can't have the sort of Secret Service saying, we still use DJI now and again when we want to, etc. This just ends most of that. Although I'm sure there's units within the Secret Service and the FBI that will still use them because they'll be able to have operational control, etc.
Well, and really, it just speaks to them exceptionalism of a few years ago, saying, "No way, China's ever going to build anything." You're having a laugh, and oh, crikey, they have. Oh no, and they've made other people pay for units of these things to do our R&D. So other people are paying for them. Oh my word! So it's not like AeroVironment got very lucky. There was a Sandy War and they had a radio control model airplane that they could sell quickly. They are. The early AV stuff, I love AV as a company, but the early AV stuff was rubbish. It really was rubbish. We used to joke it was all out of a Ben Buckle catalogue and 6-channel stuff, so you could snap the battery in, and if someone else is flying just over the hill on the same channel, up goes your prop. So they were lucky, and they got those. What are those open-ended contracts they've got in America called? They're called something, can't they? But they're basically a license to print. No, it's a license to print money. Yeah, it's a license to print money. And DJI just hubs that it is. Well, it does. But what about Autel as well? They don't seem to have got themselves on the list. Now, I have my ideas about that, but I have my ideas.
Well, orange is not a covert color.
If you take the press releases on face value, and if you take the paperwork behind the press releases, not on face value, but if you dig into it a little bit more, it seems that they're concerned specifically about DJI in terms of the structure of the business and how much they are enveloped into the military, so that they are a Chinese military company that look like a civilian company, and they're active in the US. So therefore you go on this list. To be fair to the US government, they've kept it that narrow. And they've kept their attempts at restrictions that narrow. There's been no official, apart from one press release from the FCC commissioner, there's been no official attempts to restrict that. There are other acts going through, drone security acts and all this other type of stuff and things that are happening at the moment, but they're obviously going through and still a ways off. But so to be fair to them, so I don't think it's necessarily, and perhaps it speaks to the size of Autel and the fact that the drone business is only one small section of it, etc. as well. Whereas DJI, the drones, the AI, all of that technology that they're allegedly sharing with the military and working with the military on is obviously something that's more intrinsic to their business.
It's yeah. I will see what. Oh, hello, James. Anyone flying BV loss yet? No, never. No.
Right now, I'm doing it right now. Actually, I've got a Phantom 4 doing a circuit as we speak. Actually,
I can't even spell BV loss, let alone fly.
If it's daytime for Philip, and then Philip was in a Zoom call, it really wouldn't. It's not that hard to set up a flight many miles away over. It really isn't. It's not a hard thing anymore. It was a few years ago.
A couple of the YouTube channels have done that actually, where they've actually on a live stream they've flown from Tennessee, flown a drone in Florida and that type of thing live on air. Obviously with a PIC in Florida, looking after things. But right, I actually have to hop out again, which is very rude. I do apologize.
Thank you for coming along.
But I will see you next time, and my desk will be slightly more organised.
Have a look at Sean's channel at Geeksvana.
Just because there's been some controversial things said tonight, my channel is XJet. YouTube.com/XJet. Just come along there, leave any comments, any regulators, anybody else watching, that's where to find me. Thanks. Cheers, guys.
All right, mate. Look after yourself. Cheers, mate. Oh, thank goodness he's gone. We can talk about it now.
So rude. No wonder people don't come back.
I know. Yeah, so it's any surprise.
Who's the man from Frisco this week? I don't know.
Yes, I will. He sent me a very nice email. I will ask him back. It would be interesting to see how that goes. Have they sent you, or have you or Ian received anything from them?
No, I didn't get back to them yet. I mean, it's fairly low on my list of priorities at the moment.
Oh, well, now he's being rude.
Just honest. I just call it as I see it.
Call it as you see it. Yeah. No, the whole thing with DJI is it's a slow-moving train in America, and they've got to get a lot of ducks in a row if they really are going to ban stuff. And we can't really forget, and I'll try and end this then. The DJI will be selling more aircraft in one day than the entire Blue SUAS program makes in a year. That's all the manufacturers in the Blue SUAS. I guarantee it. DJI sell more aircraft in one day than they do in a year.
So does this ban the DJI drones or DJI technology completely? I mean, what if you're doing bespoke drones and you're using DJI's FPV system? Is that included in this list or not?
It's not banning. No. It's saying they're not a normal day-to-day company. They are a military company from China. That's what they're supposing, and it's not physically banning. It's just putting the name on a list. Yeah. There's no consequence.
If they're a military company and China is somewhat aligned with Russia, why are they still allowing Mavics and things to be flown by Russia's enemies?
I think, haven't we got to have... what did you miss, Patrick? I did mention you earlier. I'll ask you now, Patrick. Was it in about 2007, 2008 that you were at that show and tell with DOD vendors and FBI and all that sort of thing, and they were horrified by jets? That's the bit I wanted to confirm. I'm sure it was a ban is only on federal dollars. Yeah, but that was a pre-existing one, I think, wasn't it, Sean? I think that was pre-existing.
Can you imagine if those same people had been at our field and seen Ron fly? My goodness.
Exactly.
Jets would have been the least of the worries.
Very nice aircraft that you had there, I thought. But DJI are very successful. America missed the boat. Europe missed the boat. We all missed the boat in keeping up with the technology, and nobody would believe. That's the start of War of the Worlds, isn't it? Nobody would believe that that China could have got so far so quick, and they did. And fair play to them, is what I'll say. But I did go on, mate. So am I.
I was going to say the only thing though is with DJI, it's the integration of the camera and the system.
Yeah,
that's what's incredible, But if something like the Cube, I love for a flight controller. It's just a shame that hooking the rest of it together isn't as easy as getting a camera that DJI have, like even something the size of the 4 Pro, a little 20 megapixel camera that you could just fit on a nice little gimbal, suspend it underneath an aircraft, and be as simple to use on a controller as the DJI, you know, with the OSD, then they would be heaven. And everyone would jump to that kind of system. But there just seems to be that little bit of it's just a faff to get something like that onto the aircraft, if you know what I mean, and make it all work nicely together.
It's the turnkey solution, isn't it?
Yeah. DJI just goes ching, bang, out of the park every time.
Because basically people are stupid and lazy.
Yeah. We've got the new Mavic 3 coming, haven't we, as well?
That's the radiation hardened one.
Yeah. Yes, that one.
For battlefield operations.
Yeah.
Is the plastic is heat hardened?
Well, it's been tested over volcanoes, so must be good.
Yeah. Yeah, we spoke about that setup job as well. Yeah, that was a setup job, and that was after that demonstration. I seem to recall in it, but that's early days. That was early days of SES News of 2007, 2008, something like that. What did I want to definitely speak about? Oh yeah, that thing in Brisbane. They were attempting to land that delivery drone. That was going back to our thing about is flying BV loss over a city of power lines a good idea. They were apparently attempting to land that thing, and so people are saying, well, you know, they didn't have the right cameras and sensors to see those wires. What a load of codswallop! I mean, if you did that, if you have an emergency situation and your BV loss operation, you'd be aware of a field, a playing field, or whatever, an open area, a car park. Surely you'd fly to that.
Contingency planning, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
You'd always have you always have to be within a certain distance, and that's why you're not allowed to go below a certain height over a city where you can't glide free of the, you know, there's basic rules and understandings. If they're not adhering with those, throw them away. But on the subject of stupid use of airspace, did you see that Dubai, this is the city that was going to have the Martin jetpack as part of its firefighting force, and it was going to have policemen on quadcopters as part of their policing force. Now they're trialing air taxis, electric air taxis. Nobody in them, but they're going to have them anyway.
Well,
is that the EHang ones?
Well, Dubai, let's face it, they're going to push it because they can, because the rest of Europe is so far behind the curve regulation-wise. You know, Dubai will just go, oh yeah, GPS is good enough. Let's do it. Solid.
But Dubai's vaporware capital of vaporware city. It's like they have so many announcements. We're doing this and we're going to spend all these millions. It never happens.
Yeah, no, Dubai. It's a funny old place. It's if you want to fly cheaply back to Europe from here, you go through Dubai, and it's you go 15 hours that way to go 15 hours that way. It's not quite that many hours, but it's lots of hours.
But don't you have to walk 4 kilometers from one end of the building to the other? Isn't it the largest, longest?
It's a huge airfield, but I mean, it is just a weird place. It's a weird place where you just know that you don't believe anything that you're seeing. But that Brisbane thing annoyed me on multiple levels, especially when people started. I made a little reaction to video to that when people started saying, well, you know, we need to get together all the ground information and then we could start selling that data. I was like, oh, here we go again. You know, here we go again. Selling.
Google already has it.
Altitude Angel's already got it, of course. It's already there. But you've got it. You'd have it in multiple sources. You wouldn't be that foolish to set up an operation and not have.
Foolish? Don't you know who we are? We're Google. We don't have to be smart. We just have to be Google.
Well, it's just crazy, isn't it? You survey the area. Look at Zipline. They survey every flight route that they use, and they know where they're going to drop the parachutes, how it's going to work. They know everything about the routes that are going to take before they launch a flight, or before they launch a service. But of course, that's because they are always going to known places from a known place, and they absolutely own the takeoff and landing. It sort of also points to the folly of just a place to I don't know, it's A to B delivery, I suppose. I don't know what you call it. But going to someone's doorway anyway, because you don't know who's going to make that order. You don't know which house it is. And if you're doing multiple trips, which this one isn't, but some of the newer things will have 3 payloads on them, if you're doing multiple trips, and you haven't really thought about the
So that's
transit.
burgers and fries with a shake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they're back to Dubai again. So they haven't thought about the possible routes they might take, and that to me is at the moment is just madness. I don't know. It'd be interesting actually. We must have Bobby Healy on from Manor and see what his take on that is. But I'd be interested to hear his routing thoughts and what they do to mitigate that risk. I'm sure he'd tell us. Wing won't tell us, but it'd be very interesting. Yeah, David, I love the zip line as well. And James, is 978 the right path for drones? Which part of 978? The data services that are going to hang off it? What do you mean by that exactly, James? So RID certainly isn't the right direction for drones, and whatever's coming has got to be secure. ADSB's a 90s technology. Nice if we could hear it coming from aircraft. We have to be able to trust it, but I'm not sure it's the right thing.
The worrying thing about ADSB is that a lot of governments have been pushing really hard to get all GA signed up to ADSB, and they've been providing financial incentives, subsidies. So we know we're not going to switch away from ADSB for a very long time because there's so much now invested in it.
Yeah, it's true enough. And funny enough, I spoke to a chap who's got a couple of aircraft here, and he uses it to he puts up center pivots for farms. So he goes all over Africa putting up big center pivots up, and he's just bought a Mavic 3 Pro or whatever they are, whatever this latest Mavic 3 is, to help him with his little surveys for this sort of operations. And he was extolling the virtues of it. And I said to him, well, of course, that's got ADSB in. So if you fly towards it, it should get out of the way. And this guy is, he's got 3 aircraft, I think. And he says to me, what's ADSB?
Does he hand prop his aircraft as well?
No, but it's not. There's no mandate for it here. We don't have the ground receiver network that's required. They did dally with having not Iridium. Who does the space? Is it I can't remember. Someone does the space-based receiving network, and they did I think they might do that, but because of course our airspace, it probably does need to be space-based. Goes most of the way to Antarctica and most of the way around to the Big Island near you. So it's a huge bit of airspace, and there's no way you'd have ground coverage.
But even without the ground network, just TCAS capabilities is an important thing.
Oh, everyone's remote and meta. Yeah, we are. Partnership Microsoft VR tool. Why fly? Exactly. It's like USB. There are better ways to connect devices.
Don't get me started on Meta. This is I can't believe this guy. What's his name? Zuckerberg's going to throw his fortune down the toilet because he's got this stupid idea about everyone's going to live in virtual reality. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's hard enough in reality. It doesn't need to be virtual. Yeah. So what else have we seen? Look, we've just gone over the hour. I've just noticed I haven't kept my timekeeping going very well. What else have we seen this week?
Have you seen in the chat?
Oh, the Cotswold plane crash. Let me put it up.
This is one for Bruce.
We'll talk together. Yeah, we kind of are in a virtual reality world by the very fact that we're all in 3 different parts of the world right now.
But if you're part of the metaverse, you get legs now. The avatar has legs.
Oh, thank goodness for that. Cotswold plane crash was flying lesson gone wrong. Well, yes.
Looks like a regular landing around these parts.
I'll fly both students on board.
It managed to
I
get
love
across
the BBC can reveal, like, oh, it was a secret. Don't tell anybody. It's crazy.
Well, of course, I mean, there's that. But what about the Vulcan going off the end of the runway at Bruntingthorpe or wherever it was? I mean, that was very exciting.
Why have they blurred out the registration?
Don't know, but they've definitely totaled that, haven't they? It's definitely.
And it got
they just have to use a coarser than normal cutting paste, and it'll come up fine.
But I don't know what. I don't know. Yeah, he could. He's very good, isn't he? I I don't know what the death rate is in America this month, but it's next week's show
What, from
the
drones?
metaverse. Yeah,
What, from drones?
that's it.
It's tripled overnight.
It's 0 for drones in America still.
Yeah, but it was half that last year.
Really?
Well, it's madness that GA's having big accidents and killing lots of people in America regularly and other parts of the world, here as well. There's been several accidents with fatalities this week, and nothing seems to be done about it.
Well, we had an interesting one here. We had planes hit each other on the ground. There were 2 planes that met each other on the ground here. So thankfully no one hurt, but the planes did say hello to each other.
It's very difficult. Right.
In a very controlled environment. In a very controlled environment as well. They still managed to say hello to each other.
What you've considered is people like me used to be in that controlling environment, so it's not as controlled as you think.
Probably using Google Maps, Google Maps to navigate. That's terrible. It'll turn you into a paddock somewhere anyway.
True.
Yeah. And Squishy says death would not be 0. Yeah, no, it's not 0, but
we're talking about the recreational use of multi-rotor drones. That's the terminology I use.
Yes. And that is 0. And that is 0.
RC helicopters, if we're bringing them into
1.
Yeah, but I don't consider that a multi-rotor. It's got one rotor and then a spinny thing at the back. It doesn't count.
Yeah, there's been lots of deaths with them. Those have killed a few people,
especially after wives have found out how much they cost.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right, and on that bombshell, I think we should call it a day for today. So I'm tired now. And last week, do you see? I see it must still be cold with you, Bruce. But last week I was all wrapped up like Bruce, and now this week or today it's been super hot. But the weather is still going from a 35, 36, 40 degree day here, all the way back down to a 14-degree day the following day.
What should it be?
We had snow.
What should it be?
Oh, it should be about 25, 30. It should just be there. But it shouldn't go up to 40 and back down to 14. 40 one day, 14 the next.
Yeah, we've had over 20-degree excursions day on day. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it is spring. You get turbulent weather in the spring.
It is spring. Yeah, that's true. True. All right.
We forget these things. Blame it all on global warming. It's really just weather.
Young
what's this? Demonetized for disinformation. Oh, no.
David, thank you very much for joining us. Everybody else, thank you very much. Still wearing shorts in Yorkshire. That's only because you won't pay for the rest of the trousers. But anyway, moving on very swiftly, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves. Thanks very much for joining us. Be safe wherever you are. We'll see you again, 2100 GMT next week. Bye-bye for now. Cheers. 2 clicks, and we wait for it to finish. Oh, it's taking forever.
I can't lean over anymore. We're still on. Oh, this is the never-ending stream.